Dun, dun, dun. It's Fridays with Jarod. It's bring it in our True Hoop little Zoom show. How's everybody doing? The normal life is normal kind of Friday.
Nothing to see here, people. It's a
Nothing
regular
to see
Friday.
I don't even know how to process anymore. Like, it's just too much.
I do. I got you covered there, bro.
Okay.
We'll be well covered. Don't worry, Henry.
We're good.
Okay, I'm here to learn. Thank you.
You're here to learn.
All right, 9 by 90 starts now.
So, we always have in our document, we title these various things, and I call my first segment Eyes on the Prize. And it's not the wonderful PBS 80s documentary about the civil rights movement narrated by Julian Bond. It's about all of us making sure we pay attention to what's going on. All right, Trump and Melania have coronavirus. Okay, that's one thing. The debates happened, whatever. Oh, second thing, I paid $750 in federal income tax. Here's the math, all that. Debates happened. Like, there were just two people yelling back and forth with each other. Like, guys, we have an election coming up in 31 days. This is the fourth quarter of a finals series. And life for us is a continuous playoffs. It's just constant. We don't have an off season and a rest. It's just constant 7-game series. Sure. And we're in the fourth quarter, and this really matters right now. Do not get distracted by these silly things. My partner right now is sending handwritten notes to people in swing states who normally wouldn't come out to vote to go vote. I'm talking to people about moving out incumbents who run on these platforms that do nothing and no one holds them accountable. Guys, this is not a movie of our life. This is our actual real life, every day that's happening. So instead of marveling at the funny show and the big tent and the circus and isn't this so crazy? Like, yes, it is crazy. Now let's do some things and make some things happen. Because if we want to live in a better world, we have to all do better as a group, together. That's my time.
Love that. All right, so Bloomberg broke the story about Hope Hicks testing positive. Otherwise, I don't think that we'd know what was going on. There's no reason to think that we would. And there's discussion in the article that the White House officials knew about it and try to keep it quiet, even while she was traversing around, as if they didn't really know that you can kind of get sick from COVID if someone else around you has it. And it just reminded me when I read the article at this botched effort, even just to protect their own president. In baseball, we always used to say, you can't hide the worst fielder. It's great if he can hit, but right field, left field, the ball is going to find him, and you're going to lose because of it. And I think it's an amazing metaphor, certainly for basketball too, on defense and life. And now on offense too in the postseason, because if you can't shoot, they don't guard you. And when you've got a government run by this fucking corrupt fool, which is no other way to put it at this point, like, the virus is going to find him. Of course it is. And we're all going to be victims because of it. There's a reason why this has never happened before in the history of our country. No one's ever been this ignorant of the truth and this disinterested in how to solve problems instead of just worried about themselves and getting people. In my opinion, he just wants butts in hotel rooms, the bottom line. So this is not a surprise. Nothing that has happened is a surprise when you have someone this incompetent in office. So I agree with Jarod. My wife and I are doing similar things, my man. Go vote, do it the right way, make sure you sign all the dotted lines. Let's change the world, please.
So we're like 180 seconds in. I'm not sure I'm feeling calmer. I don't think I have more focus. Okay, so this happened to Boris Johnson too. Vladimir Putin writes to our president, Donald Trump, that he hopes he'll do well facing the coronavirus because of his, quote, inherent vitality, good spirits, and optimism, which rung a little bell when Donald Trump was on Sean Hannity's show talking about Hope Hicks testing positive. He said a lot of stuff. It was literally, I'd like to write a whole story breaking down what Trump said in that story, but we can talk about it later. But the part that really struck me was later at the end, he's recapping after recapping after recapping, and then he says that Hope is tremendous, and then immediately says, I was a little surprised that she tested positive, linking the idea that she's a tremendous person and therefore wouldn't get this kind of dirty seeming virus, right? And this idea that there are certain kinds of people is common thinking. It's not new thinking, but it's super fucking dangerous thinking, right? And the fact that it sort of pops up from Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump surprises me none, and I think is reflected in a lot of policies and et cetera. But that just rung a bell for me. Like, oh, there are people for whom the virus isn't suited. Wow. Like a lot of people have died. 200,000 great people have died because of this virus.
That's good. I like it.
So there's been some scuttlebutt around the Brooklyn Nets and their two new stars, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant has a new podcast called The Etceteras with Kevin Durant. And I titled this section of my podcast, Seek First to Understand, right? And that's stolen from Stephen Covey, one of my favorite books, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. That is habit number 5. Seek first to understand, then be understood. There are plenty of things you can criticize Kyrie and KD for, as you can with all of us, because no one's a perfect human being. The whole idea about, I don't see us having a head coach. This is the first time I have a person on my team who I feel like can take the shot instead of me, as per usual, taken and lifted out of context. I listened to both. It's a 2-part episode, the full 2 + 3 hours of the two of them talking. And it's actually 2 guys talking about basketball. It's like, yeah, man, it's kind of collaborative, right? Like, Steve's going to be out here grinding on us, coaching us really hard. And when the other guys see that, they're going to be jumping in line. Kyrie, yeah, it's like, it's like he's kind of a head coach, but like, you're a head coach, because then they're going to trickle down to everybody else. And if you read it that way, it sounds different versus this is a better thing for us all to look at and say, ooh, here's a news cycle, which we're not going to talk about for the next 48 hours. We have 24-hour programming. We have to fill it somehow. So here's this great thing that Stephen A. and Max and whoever on these talk shows can yell at each other back and forth. And my thing is, that's what we do in our politics too. Tying it back to point number 1. People see what's going on around you. Context, nuance, deep dive. That stuff matters.
We are going to debate this topic after.
I knew that was coming.
Okay. I love Jarod to death, and he knows it, but we're going to debate that.
Well, you're a coach, so I expected that to come.
No,
that's the other context. Yeah.
I'm always a curious boy, and so I checked out the American Conservative. They have one of their writers, who I won't mention his name, nor did I link it to our thing today, because fuck those guys. But one of their lead writers who voted for Trump and admitted he likely will again. He admitted this in the same article. He said this. He was talking about Biden interrupting and how terrible Biden is. And then he writes, having said that, my God, I never imagined I would see an American president, I got to move our screen here, refuse to say he would accept the results of the election if he loses. That's our democracy right there. That's it. A constitutional democratic order depends on the peaceful transfer of power. Trump's refusal, this is the key thing, to simply follow the ordinary rules of debate last night, his constant talking over Biden, symbolized his inner refusal to live by the rules that govern our constitutional order. It was repulsive and frightening. And then the other big line, he is unfit for office. And then he admitted later he probably will still vote for him. I read this for a reason. Everyone listening to us, I would guess, if you're still listening, either we think we really are beautiful and brilliant basketball minds, great, but you probably agree with more or less how we see the world. But you may have friends that don't. Go find this stuff. Play this video to them. They know how unfit for office he is. They know. Anyone voting for him has to vote knowing they're voting for someone clearly unfit. The evidence is overwhelming, and they know it.
I'm going to, even though we're in this sort of crazy pandemic, this will be my second straight 9x90 episode that opens with Russia. All right. So Alexei Navalny was poisoned basically on video. Like shortly after he ate the poison, he was screaming in an airplane bathroom, and the whole thing played out almost in real time in public. And now 55% do not believe he was poisoned. I'll explain why. The Russian opposition, Alexei Navalny is the chief rival of Putin, and some people suggest that if they had an honest election today, he would win. He's been in house arrest for most of the last decade. And now he's in Germany recovering from this poisoning. A while back in the Kremlin, everyone kind of suspected that the opposition parties were funded by the Kremlin. Then they leaked a photo of one of those giant old phones with all the instant connect buttons, right? You press the button to get this line, and it was all the heads of all the other parties were labeled on there. Which means now, as a favor to Putin, a strategy to Putin, everyone who might be legit opposition is assumed to be not legit opposition, which means he can have no real opposition. There won't be a public groundswell behind anyone because the public doesn't believe in anyone. So I'm saying this today because we think we're cool to be cynical and not to believe things. But you should believe some things, because if you don't believe anything, it's a real favor to autocrats. We can talk more about this later.
I like that. I like that line.
All right, so LeBron James was talking to the media yesterday about his relationship with Anthony Davis. Judy's going to play the first few seconds of that.
We're not jealous of each other. I think that's the best thing. In professional sports, you have guys that join forces. Two, you call them alpha males. That's what they call them. Two guys that's been dominant in a specific sport on their own respective teams. And they get together and they talk about, okay, how dominant they can be, and they talk about this is going to be this and that. I believe jealousy creeps in a lot.
You can stop it there, Judy. Yeah, and so I thought this was interesting because, relationships are so interesting, and individuals, we all evolve over time, and time plays such a huge part about this. I think LeBron, as great as he is, part of this is Asian wisdom and seeing his basketball mortality, right? And realizing, look, this ain't 26-year-old LeBron James. This is 35-year-old LeBron James. It behooves me, and it's beneficial to me, to let Anthony Davis be this focal point and be this important person, right? Maybe 25-year-old LeBron couldn't have done that with someone around the same age as him, right? And I think it's so interesting because every relationship works off of, are both people getting something out of this relationship, right? The reason why they tend to go bad is because usually one side feels something's not happening one way or the other. And I thought that was particularly interesting from LeBron, and we can discuss it in more detail later.
I like that. All right, so Doc Rivers apparently is going to be the Sixers coach. And great, we can talk about that if we want to. We have plenty of time to talk about next year, sometime next year. But it just reminds me of something. I don't know that Lloyd Pierce played in the NBA. I don't know his career. Dwayne Casey wasn't a great basketball player, but he's in his 60s, coached a long, long time. He's been a coach for a long time. But we tend to only promote, and on the show we even talked about Ime Udoka and Sam Cassell and guys that made the NBA, right? You can be black and not be an NBA player or even a college player and be a phenomenal coach. Why couldn't you? You can be a woman and not play college basketball on the men's side and the NBA or WNBA and still be a great coach. And so as in my profession, as we're trying to attract, like I'm looking for high school kids. Like one of my son's teammates last year is a young black man who just, in my opinion, he's got it to be a coach. He never thought about it for 1 second. Why? Because he knows he's a Division III level college player. And so he has no shot of it. And so I walked him through the path. Oh, there's the path. I can't promise you'll get there, but there is a way to do it. Frank Vogel, to my knowledge, didn't play for the Celtics for 10 years. Like most white guys didn't. Rick Pitino wasn't any kind of great coach. You go on and on. We need to start opening that window up to anyone that wants to coach men and women, to not feel like they have to be pros first to do it as an athlete.
Okay, last one. What's the injury toll now for the finals? I mean, we have game one, and it kind of couldn't gone worse. Rondo's eye, KCP's chest cramps, Bam's left shoulder, Jimmy's left ankle, Goran Dragic's left foot. I think I saw Shams updated that Bam and Goran are doubtful for tonight. And there was also this. This guy Jeff Stotts is great. We've had Marcus Elliott on the show, and there have been a lot of talk about injury prevention. Without a lot of dogma about the best way to do it, I'll just say that, like, if you talk to people who are expert in injury prevention, which I think used to be kind of a snake oil field,
Agreed.
It's not anymore, right? Like now there's real science there. Like nobody thinks we're doing a good job now. Nobody thinks that playing every other day all through the playoffs is something a human body can take. Nobody thinks that the exact protocols NBA players favor are the best ones, right? Chris Joshman's book is full of this kind of stuff. I just hope we can do better. Like, I hope that we can take in the advice of the smartest people. There's one guru of this. Basically, like, let's use sports science to get better, to have fewer injuries, because it's available to us. And these are, this is going to kind of suck now, right? Like, these finals are this is kind of a bummer. It's a bummer for Goran. It's a bummer for Bam. It's a bummer for basketball. I just don't believe it had to be this way.
P3 and Sparta Science, places that we know well, Henry, are things the NBA can use. And Coach and I talked about this on the show yesterday. We were all skeptical about the bubble at the start, and it went off well. And now to have this happen at the end is like, oh, come on, man. Like, can't we just make it through? And no, to your point, every other day, yeah, they're not traveling, which is nice. You don't have to get these big men into tiny tubes that are 40,000 feet above the air, but playing every other day intense basketball, also not a good idea in terms of injury prevention.
Well,
Yeah,
I think we have an idea as to why. I've always been curious as to what's the rush? Like, really, what's the rush? We're not playing for a long time in 2021 season. Well, now we know the rush, although I think we always suspected it. Adam Silver admitted, I think, in his press conference for game one, that there have been positive tests in the bubble. Disney employees have tested positive. 6,500 people are going in and out of that bubble over the course of time. I think at some point that was like almost every day. And they just want to get this done. And they're almost there. They're probably almost in a way happy that Bam may be out. The Dragon seems definitely out for the rest of this, because it might be done on Wednesday. Yeah, it could be done on Wednesday. I don't think it will be necessarily, but it could be for sure. And they're dodging bullets left and right. And it's unfortunate, because I think it would have been an interesting experiment to see. We always have this. I mean, Klay Thompson got hurt. They're up 15 in game 6 last year at home. Like, that's going 7 after losing Cousins, after losing Looney, after losing KD. And then Klay goes down, up 15 in the second half.
And the game with KD, Coach, right? He's like 5 right from the field, hits his first one. You're like, oh, the Warriors are back. They're going to win this series. Makes it
right. Right. So I think that this would have been an interesting experiment, the Henry Abbott experiment, I'll call it, where they had 4 months off. No one was fatigued when they showed up in June, right, or early July. Mostly was early July. And if we had just done a regular format and played through November, which in Florida is still tank top weather, to be clear, we might have seen a very, very healthy postseason. And wouldn't that have been interesting going forward for the data, right?
It's, I think it's usually, it's some number of billions a year from TV, and the TV schedule doesn't work very well when football's in session, right? Like this is the rush. Like I don't think that they need those Sundays, right? Like ABC needs Sunday games. That's the big revenue item, and like when football's on, doesn't happen. So I think that's the heart of why the schedule was made this way and why they had to get it every other day. They had a problem before the bubble, which was they were at risk of not getting this year's national network TV money, right? Like now the economic injuries will be suffered not by the NBA, but by the broadcasters. So I don't know, like that's not a win for Disney. That's a win. That's okay for Adam, right? Yeah, but I think it's like this is always what they're up against. But now that we're pivoting to a league that isn't particularly about games, right? As the revenue driver. So to me, like, do we have to abuse these players to have all these games to satisfy this revenue that won't be the source of revenue for long? Like, I think we're going to quickly want just, once you're seeing, David, LeBron checking out of games in the fourth quarter because he wants out, or Anthony Davis not making it to half court. Like, once you're that kind of tired, our guy from the Mayo Clinic would say, a lot of serious research shows you can't have more than 5 extreme workouts in 2 weeks. The sixth one, you already need like 3 days off, right? Once we're already defying that, like, they need a real break. Otherwise, the injury risk goes up. And everyone in the finals has been on the wrong side of that by the time they get there. Everyone who plays long minutes, right? So everyone plays every game. So, we all know what happened last year's finals. And this year's finals now, too. It's a lot to ask.
And it's not even just to be clear, it's not even just the examples you gave, Henry. As someone who's watching the games, like, a coach who's watching closely like I do, I just see it in their decision-making. Like, the guy that makes the mistake, that never makes that mistake.
Yeah.
That's when you're brain dead. And then, okay, then they stop running, because that's when they realize, I just can't, I'm gassed, right? You just see it. And it's too bad. And then they also get hurt, which is also, just awful. Like, this was going to be a good series, I thought. I really,
yeah.
And now it's like, and already game 1 for the ratings was the worst in NBA Finals history, which seems amazing considering the games used to be on tape delay when I was growing up. So Like worse than that, when I already knew the score of the game when I watched it, I knew the Lakers had won Game 6 in 1980. I listened on the radio with my brother in my room when Magic had 42, 15, and 7. That TV ratings was worse. I have a hard time believing that. But and that I'm curious. I'd love to get your opinion on, guys. Why is that? Miami's a big market. LA's a big market. There's no stars on Miami like LeBron and Davis, but LeBron and Davis were playing.
It's not just the NBA, because I saw a tweet about this. It's game 1 of the finals, Major League Baseball playoff.
Right.
Just about everything except for football is down like massively, like, and worst in history. Stanley Cup, like all that stuff. And I think starting all this stuff again, like at these weird times of the year, like July and August, and it's like, what? This is not when we watch basketball and hockey. And, you know, I think we're so, as a society, we're so like, this is how stuff works. Like, September is start of this season, and that's how our brains work. That's why football is fine, because guess what? Every Sunday, starting in September, my team's on TV. So everybody's back in their normal routine as it relates to football. Every other sport's like, it's just not like that. The French Open's going on right now, like in October.
I didn't even know that. Couldn't it also be, guys, that Henry says this all the time, that the new generation of consumers like my children, they watch what they want to watch when they want to watch it always.
True.
Always. And they have an account where if they want to watch YouTube, something for $4, like there's a budget for all of that. And these games, this is when you have to watch it. And if you don't watch it then, it's not as fun because you actually know the ending, right? As opposed to most other things. And there's never been more shows on. There's never more options ever in the history of humans than now. Except for you're worried about a lion eating you or something, right? Or a bad guy getting you in the before AD kind of thing, where life was really hard until you were 25 and then you were dead. I just think that there's just so much to do, and so ratings are going to go down because of it.
Well, TV's down generally.
Right.
Cable TV is down, right? So that's a big part of it. And there's no law that's going to come back, right? It might just be that we'll just watch. Like last night, my son showed me a video of, it's actually hilarious, of a pug walks in the room, and my guess is they had moved the couch, and like it jumps where the couch used to be, just jumps into the wall. He can do that for hours, right? Like this is what he's not going to watch a finals game ever. But, and also, by the way, we're a little distracted. There is a pandemic.
Yeah,
This is the finals. This is an NBA show, and it took us like 8 minutes to get to basketball, right? Like that's reflected in ratings too, right? Like things are kind of heavy these days, you know. Can we talk about when David said we wanted to revisit the Durant and Kyrie?
So, Jarod's right. We should be consuming fully. In fact, I initially was going to talk about that, and Jarod let me know that he listened to the whole podcast. I had not, and probably won't. And he said there's context there that I needed to be aware of, because I was looking at a tweet, and I appreciate that, Jarod, and you're right, and that's why I took it out. I'm glad you mentioned it. And I was kind of being just entertaining and funny, but there is some truth to my point, which is. This was the problem we saw with the Clippers. Like Doc was trying to coach, and so were 5 other dudes, and they all were wearing polos. Forget about the players doing the coaching. Someone's got to make a decision on rotation, right? Someone's going to decide we're playing man or zone. I'm obviously being very, very general here. It doesn't help that there's a belief that, I'm supposed to be doing that. Like it needs to be one person. I think Nash is going to be an amazing collaborator. I think he already has been with KD. We talk about this. That's why I think he has the job. But it needs to be his decision. There needs to be one person held accountable for those kinds of decisions during the game. Before the game, he'd be silly not to talk to KD and Kyrie about, hey, what are your thoughts? And most coaches do. I've had players call me before, an hour before a game, say, hey, coach, what do you think we should do on this particular action, like a Kobe, whatever, because the head coach just asked them, hey, what do you think we should do? And they wanted my opinion. And I give those head coaches great respect. So that should happen and will happen. But there still needs to be one chief.
No doubt. And I think we talked about this on the yesterday's show, Coach, when we were singing the praises of the Lakers and Frank Vogel. Everyone loves to say LeBron's coach GM. But he and Vogel are clearly aligned and on the same page in what their philosophy is on both sides of the floor. Once you have that, LeBron can then be barking at whoever on the floor, and that's fine, because that's what Vogel's going to say anyway. So, and it's probably received better by a player when LeBron's telling you, yo, man, you missed that stupid assignment on here. You're supposed to rotate this way. Like, and that's what you hope, if you're a Nets fan, that Nash, KD, and Kyrie have. That stuff's worked out ahead of time so that on the floor, it's fine. But that remains to be seen.
I felt a little worried, like, I'm in the media. So I'm on the side of players having podcasts and talking at great length about their inner workings because it's interesting to me, right? Like, I have noticed that on good teams, it tends to happen less, right? Like when trust is high within the team, there's not a lot of like sharing the dirt with people like us, right? Like, you know, like Greg Popovich kind of doesn't talk about what he's doing, right? Yeah, and like, and if you, and it seems like a little bit of a sign, like if you really believe that you have something, like you're greater, the whole is greater than some of its parts, right? If or David talks about sending his players on the floor feeling like it's 6-on-5, right? If you really felt like that, you would probably be so excited about that you wouldn't need to make your podcast more exciting, right? That would be a lesser criteria. So I was just a little bit like I'm glad it was interesting. I'm glad they talked a lot about it for me. But as a Nets fan, I'd be like, could you just like, oh, that's, to me, it's a sign that we're not all on the same page.
Right. And we haven't even started the season yet.
Yeah.
There's something that happened, and Jarod and I talked about this yesterday, where Lakers are down 23-10, caught timeout, Heat are rolling, getting any shot they want. Dwight Howard was spinning like a top defensively, and their pick and roll coverage especially. And I don't remember if it was the very next possession, but within a couple possessions, I told this to Henry, I think, on the phone yesterday. I wish I had the video to show it on Synergy. They're running pick and roll. LeBron, I think, is guarding Crowder in the corner, right corner. He is under the rim helping on pick and roll coverage as, you know, Caruso is chasing, you know, the dragon over the screen, and there's all these Lakers converging, and they kick it out, and fucking LeBron is shot out of a cannon to contest Crowder, who can't get the three off. He covered so much ground, and right away I thought, man, I wish I had heard Bogle in that timeout. It's entirely possible that LeBron didn't need anything Bogle said to tweak his own button, like, I got to upgrade my speed a little bit. We're getting crushed. And I don't want to lose by 10 points more in a quarter, because I know Thorpe's rule probably didn't think that. So he does not want to get blown out.
X notes. Ooh, Thorpe says this.
Right, but listen, I do think it's why I started playing better in the second half, but that's a whole other story. But for sure, that's part of a coach's job, when we agree, is to press buttons, is to tone us down when we're 2 up and lift us up when we're down. That's part of what coaching's supposed to be. Breathe spirit. That's what you do. So Vogel breathed some spirit, is my guess, at that timeout. And LeBron reacted, which is, we don't care what the other motivations are. As a coach, and Hubie Brown would say this a lot too, like, I don't care what your motivations are. Just do it at the level it's supposed to be done. And they put on a clinic from that point on. So if KD is coaching sometimes, Kyrie's coaching sometimes, by definition, Nash isn't. And I don't know then if he has the command to breathe spirit when they most need him to. And that's going to be a problem in these games.
Well, the story that speaks to me, Coach, is when the Cavs made their epic comeback 3-1 against the Warriors, and halftime in the locker room, Ty Lue says to LeBron in front of the whole team, we need more from you. And LeBron gets mad and has to be held back by Channing Frye. And Channing Frye says, he's right. Like, we do need more. Like the ability, like, the coach has to have the ability to say that, right? As Ty Lue did, and have the other players be like, yeah, man, he's right. To the best player on the team. If that
best player in the world,
right? Then you're good. If you don't have that, well,
right? I completely agree. I didn't know that. That's really good. Yeah,
they might end up with that.
Yeah,
they haven't even had a meeting yet, right?
I absolutely think Steve Nash. I think absolutely Steve Nash has the ability to be able to talk honestly with KD again, and Nash knows this. I talked earlier about promoting the assistant coach to head coach that hasn't ever made the NBA before. You can earn that respect a lot of different ways. Nash already has it from the standpoint of being a Hall of Famer, 2-time MVP, right? Durant's got 1, I think, and he's got 2. So he's got a chance to do that. Whether he does or not, and whether KD responds, we'll have to see. But that's the hope. Like, I think it's possible Nash is fantastic.
In this scenario, I don't think KD is the problem. Kyrie's the one I'd be worried about if I were Nets fan. I think KD
totally agree.
Fine. Kyrie's the one I'd be like, oh, is he going to start bristling? Like,
KD plays the right way, guys.
Right. Kyrie's the one that's like, I'm like, I don't know.
I like your sound effects. If we could do GIFs with sound, Jarod would be amazing at it. He'd have a whole career. Yeah, Kyrie is a concern.
Okay, I wrote down when we were doing number 90, there were several issues that we wanted to revisit. One of them, I wanted to talk about your amazing point about context, which is very relevant here, strikes me as like, okay, there's too much now, right? Like, so David said he's not going to listen to the podcast because it's 3 hours, and we
It's
have,
not
we
just
have
that.
a lot of things we're interested in, right?
Yeah, I have so many podcasts. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So this is where I think this trust thing really matters. Like, you're going to want to end up kind of believing the person who did listen for 3 hours. In this case, it's you, and I do believe you, right? You're like, no, it really wasn't like that. It was a little more like this. Like, so if I can trust you, and I do, then I can kind of gain the key insight from this podcast that I actually think I will try to listen to it, but who knows? These things don't always happen. But like, I feel like there's like if you can build a network, you can get really much more valuable information than if you're just alone trying to like be the CIA of sussing out what's right and what isn't, right?
It is. I talk about this all the time. Like, to your point, again, there is too much. And it's much easier when you see something on Twitter or whatever. And especially, that's why context matters on both sides. When you saw it was who said it, you were like, well, of course he said that, right? Like, your reputation precedes you in this case. Like I said before, there are plenty of reasons to criticize both of them, right? And you're like, oh, I bet they did mean it this way. And again, that's the part of that's on them for how they react. But it's like everything else. Everything isn't always 100% one thing. There is that 1 or 2 times where they actually mean it differently, but you've engendered so much bad will before, so it's like, nobody cares, right? So it's a strange thing.
And there's like I think about this all the time. So, I mean, I live near New York and I work in media. So like when the New York Times comes, I know a fair number of the people who have bylines in theirs. I'm sure you do, right? Or same with the New Yorker or whatever. We've had people on the show who have the New Yorker, right? And so I feel almost in some cases, I start such kind of investigative stories or whatever it is with almost like an affection for the work that I know is unseen, right? Where I'm like, oh, they did honest work here. Ooh, they called all the people and then they discarded the preconceived notions they had at some point in the process, and now they got the real stuff for us, right? They went through this painful process, and so I feel by the time something's in the New Yorker or 100 other publications, I'm like, wow, this is the good stuff, right? Like I really trust it, and I think that has changed my life compared to a lot of what's happening now. People are like, oh, there's a lot of fake stuff in the media. It's like, yeah. Like, you know, if you need to paint with one brush about all of it in the era of Fox News, yeah, you're right. Like, but you don't have to, right? You can outsource. Some people have earned your trust, right? Go look at Jane Mayer's track record. Like, she's doing fine.
100%.
You know, like,
and it's also Twitter, right? Like, we have to be careful about using that as our be all end all, right? Like, oh, I saw it there, it must be fact. Okay, I saw it. I'm interested now. Let me see who said it. Like, I don't know. Let me see who else is, to your point, Henry. Oh, Jane said it. This person said it. Now I'm starting to believe this is true. Okay, I've done my work. But once you see a thing flash, but that's what Twitter's for, to get your neurons firing, and now it's just retweet, and it just turns into, you know.
It's also, I can connect this a little bit to what David's saying about KD and Kerry, which is Twitter is where everybody's the coach.
Yes.
Like,
don't we know it?
Yeah. So, and you know, it's nice. I like the democratizing effect. I like the idea that everyone gets a microphone. That's cool. But coaching is a real profession, and some people, like Nick Nurse, has earned something in a timeout that not everybody should have, right? Jane Mayer has earned something on Twitter that not everyone should have, right? And just because everybody can publish, or everybody can say we're playing zone, doesn't mean everybody knows what to publish or what to.
Correct. I know you had a point, Coach.
Yeah, so just on the point Henry said about trust, I wrote on Twitter, I think last night, Thomas Beller and Jeff Asher.
Yeah.
Love and I wrote that I just love our true family. Like, I just adore. So my world has expanded so much. When you spend an hour on these shows, you can see some things you maybe wouldn't be able to just see. Almost like it's not 3-dimensional, but it feels that way compared to Twitter, right?
Yes.
And I listen to, I mean, that's where I get informed, is all these amazing people we've had just on our show, which is probably 80 shows now or close to it, maybe a little bit more, has helped so much. And I think, Henry, your point too is so good. It's one of the problems with the people watching Fox is they won't allow themselves to expand their horizons. So as an example, and so everyone has got that groupthink. So I don't agree with you when we argued the other day briefly and lovingly about Chris Wallace's failures. But when you speak, or when Jarod or Judy speaks to anything that doesn't immediately ring true to me, my first reaction is, so that's an inside joke of me and Henry. I do think, and I examine my own thoughts because I trust you guys so much. And that happens to me pretty much daily with the people in my life, mostly my wife, who I'm with by far the most because there's no one else in this home anymore. There don't have any pets, right? And so she has her own thing going on, and she's consuming content nonstop. And I don't know most of what she's saying because I'm not following all the people she's following. And that's why we walk in the evenings together. We just let out what we've learned from the day from each other, from people that we trust. And I hope she gains from me, and I certainly gain from her. And that isn't happening enough. That's the tribalism, and Henry's talked to this a lot over the years in our friendship, that it's just me against the world kind of thing. And Thomas Friedman's written about this before, where it's just our tribe against everyone else. And that's such a problem. And so we've got a lot of ignorant people because of that. And they won't listen to us because we're not in their tribe. No. Even though we share the same citizenship, or in many cases, the same color or race, or religion, we're not in the same tribe because we don't watch Fox, and that's it. We're dead to them. And it's a shame.
And it's even a little bit more than that, right? Because what it's about for them is they know that Trump is all of these like crazy things, but it doesn't matter because what matters to them the most is quote unquote owning the libs, right? Like that's their favorite thing. And he pisses off the people that they hate the most. So it's a perfect symbiotic relationship. So it doesn't matter what he does on this other end. The people that I hate, you also hate and make mad. This is awesome, even if it's performative or not. So they're like, it's like, red meat for the dog. It's like, yes, every time they're devouring it. And I was going to say a wonderful thing. It's actually not a wonderful thing, but it's a really, you want to look at how to really sort of like manipulate like a group or a crowd, find out what their point is, right? And you just you push that button. Yeah, I hate them too. They're awful. Yeah, and it feeds, and it's brilliant, really brilliant.
This is how, like, in terms of messaging style, this is how the George Bush White House prepared us for war in Iraq, right? It's like in the weeks before, it's like, no, it's like rampant pedophilia and animals in cages and, mobile like chemical labs and, blah, 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 right? Or like actually, the Kremlin does this all the time with like, before they go to Georgia or South Ossetia or whatever, there's like, the TVs are full of like, the Chechens. Oh my God, the Chechens, right? Like
the Chechens.
Yeah, like the number of things in tribute to the Chechens is ridiculous, right? But this is the real, whether it's sort of that thing I was saying about other kinds of people, right? If Joe Biden is standing on the stage as a Trojan horse for pedophiles and crazy liberals and people who want to end suburbia and like all this craziness, right? Then I can see how you might want to be a little worried about voting a team of pedophiles in. What the fuck is that about? Anyway,
yeah, drink blood and all that crazy shit.
Yeah. So to me, actually, Joe Biden had a clever. It's in real time. I was like, whoa, this is harsh. When he was just like, no, I'm the Democratic Party. It seemed like he was stiff arming a bunch of AOCs or whatever. But I think, in fact, it was a pretty clever address to this one point, which was like, I'm not a Trojan horse. Like, you're talking to this guy. There aren't 50 secret people who are going to occupy the White House whose names you don't know. There's going to be one guy whose name you do know, right? Which is like, I think a pretty clever, because then, Trump did several more times loop back to like, well, you just lost the liberals, right? Because he's trying to reattach the insane unnamed crazies, right? But it's like, but Biden's like, no, it's just me. It's gonna be me. And I thought that was like, it might be a lie, but it was a clever rhetorical moment.
It always reminds me, to Jarod's point, and to Trump's kind of the way he used to behave. We'll see what happens now, because COVID is like my mom went to school with someone who is Trump's age. My parents are a little older than Trump, and she's had it for 6 months now. She's had not COVID. She's had the problems with it for 6 months. When Malcolm Gladwell talks about the tomato sauce story, which I think we've talked about the show once before, where there's a certain segment of people that like extra chunky and extra spicy and regular, and Prego didn't know about the extra chunky part. Well, we've now learned in America, we've known about some other countries, there's a certain segment of society, whatever percent you want to call it, let's say 25, 30, that prefer bullies. As long as those bullies see the world through their eyes of whether it's pro-life and all that kind of stuff, they don't mind. I would say prefer bully or okay with it, one or the other. But I would argue that as long as you behave like that, you're fine. Like, and many of them, a certain segment again, actually really do want you to be crass. They want that. That is power to them. It's unfortunate. And if there was an electoral college, none of this would have mattered because they wouldn't have won in the first place, which is why they're keeping it. And hopefully we get rid of that. It's a whole nother thing. I want to read out the whole damn Constitution we've talked about. There is these
Judy was like, well, we can go a little slower.
I mean, I would like to get a bunch of really smart people in a room and spend 5 years writing it, whatever. But this group, it won't listen to anyone else, and only we can be right. I'll remind you of this, last thing I'll say on the subject. Religion's this way. So the only difference between an atheist and any religious person is just one God. Because they can agree that no other gods exist. The thousands of gods throughout history that have existed in people's minds, the atheist and the religious person will agree are made up. The difference is just the one God that the religious person believes, the atheist doesn't believe that too, right? That's what we're down to right now. It's just that one little bit right there, and yet it's enormous. The difference is enormous, right? David's
just sticking it to the polytheists out there.
The 11 of them. Yeah, the 11 of them. I'm just thinking. All right, what else you got from your notes, Henry?
Oh my goodness. We should talk about maybe like so. 45 seconds after Donald Trump tweeted that he and Melania had tested positive for COVID-19, Shams, our NBA reporter Shams, tweeted it. For many people, it looked like he'd been first, but I guess it definitely wasn't first. But it's probably fast enough. We could do some speed tests that he actually had sources, which is believable. I don't know. What do you guys think?
He had the news about Trump?
Yeah.
Yeah, Shams is awesome. I was like, this is incredible. Like, wait, is this the one I sent you, Judy, or that David?
No, this is a different one. I don't see it there. Anyway,
well, I don't know about that. I know that when he tweeted, I said this to you guys before air. When he at 1 o'clock in the morning, whatever it was, I was watching tape, and I saw they tweeted that he's waiting tests, and this was hours after I read about Hope Hicks. I almost woke Christy up and said, "Honey, he's definitely got it."
No, David. So Shams was a top national trending on Twitter because of this tweet, which was at 12:54. Yeah. So he tweeted that within a few seconds of Trump tweeting it. And so the NBA world, they got it from Shams first.
I certainly didn't have any news. I just did math. That is amazing. I wonder.
I love the Elmo gif with the fire. And he's just like,
how did he do it?
Well, so I mean, this is where let's think about how people break stories, right? You have a transactional relationship with a power broker, right?
Yeah.
Do NBA power brokers have connections to the White House? Do you read fucking TrueHoop?
I was going to say, we're way ahead on that.
They sure do.
So I'm thinking if Trump has an inner circle, like they would potentially be people Shams would know, like it's not out of the question to me. Like that. Wow. It's not out of the question. This is how this works, right?
That's amazing.
I imagine we're going to get back to basketball again at some point. But
Let's do it.
I sent Judy a tweet that, and Jamel Hill posted this video on Instagram, and it's also on Twitter. And I thought it was just kind of fitting, and I'd love for you guys just to take a look.
About overcrowding in their schools.
Nice to meet you.
And some were worried about having low-income housing in their neighborhood.
Why did you pick this spot?
Nicole Humphrey is a local opponent of the development.
What is your concern when it comes to Section 8 and low income?
The lifestyle, I feel like, that goes with Section 8 is usually working single moms or people who are struggling to keep their heads above water. And it's not, I feel so bad saying that, but it's not, it's just not people who are, I guess, of the same class as us, which sounds bad, but I don't mean that in a bad way.
Some people would say, look, they maybe have not had the opportunities that their kids are not going to have the opportunities that your kids are going to have in this neighborhood.
Right.
Can they share in that?
The problem with that is I hear a lot of the unfair of, we haven't been given this or not that, or we haven't been afforded things that you might have been afforded. I don't look at multimillionaires and think, why don't I have a yacht? Why don't I have a private jet? It's a mindset, I feel like.
Do you think that you maybe are stereotyping the folks?
Oh, I totally am, 100%. It's not, it works both ways. I'm definitely not a racist and I'm not bigot, but I think I hold a little bit of a stigma against people who are different. We don't want nomads. We don't want people who don't have roots. I just don't want that to be what my community is about.
Turn it off, please. I can't take it anymore.
I mean,
What is that?
Where was it from? Because I saw
Yeah,
this
what is
yesterday.
no, this is
I couldn't source it though.
I gotta tell you, as a kid, as you guys know, I love watching television, and my dad would always be like, "You spend way too much time watching TV." So he'd always be like, "If you're gonna do that," he made me watch PBS and Channel 13 a ton. So like, as an adult, I love PBS and Channel 13 because my dad made me watch it. That is a frontline.
Frontline, okay. So as real as it gets, like as authentic as you can get is Frontline.
Well, the amazing thing about that is there's so much, right? Like, but the reality is, if you were to ask that woman, Nicole Humphrey, she thinks she's a good person, right? Like she would tell you, "I'm a good person."
No, for sure.
And the denial about, I know that sounds stereotypical, but I'm not a racist or a bigot, right? Like I just don't like people who have differences. Well, that's exactly what fucking racist. And
That actually is the topic, ma'am.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's who Trump is talking to about these people coming to ruin and take over your suburbs, right? She's someone who's like, I don't want these nomads and people with no roots. And she legitimately compared someone wanting affordable housing, the same thing as her being okay with not having a private jet or a yacht, right? Like this is what goes on in people's heads when they think about these things. They think that is an equitable thing. And it's like, wait, what? Like, where do you live and where are you from? And when I say we have to be so vigilant about going out and doing what is necessary and holding people accountable, because if we don't change it, we're going to have more and more of that. And it's just going to get like, it's already pretty bad, but like we're going down a really, really terrible hole right now.
So she's very clearly in the wrong here, right? And she knows it. She doesn't want to be a racist, but
Right.
she has these feelings, right? She doesn't, and so the communication challenge of our time is like, what do you say to her? I would be the wrong person to talk to her in a way that would build bridges, right? Like maybe we all would. Actually, David, I bet you'd be pretty good at it. Like David,
Good coach.
you'd be way better
She
than
needs some coaching, that's for sure.
But to me, like I'm basically gonna like be mad. I'm mad when I hear her talk, right?
I am too.
But the one little shred of a thought where I was like, maybe this would be constructive is that happiness research, which is basically like, like you were already alluding to this, job, but like, below $70,000, every dollar you go down, like just crushes your soul. Whereas above $70,000, no dollar you make makes you happier. Like bigger yacht, smaller yacht, like you report your own happiness as identical as someone who makes, depending where you live, around $70,000. So like, to me, the struggle to get into the happiness zone is one we should all support, right? Like, whereas the one to get from rich to richer and yachts and whatever is just a stupid one. I mean, like for everybody work hard, get what you get. I'm fine with it. But to me, like, this is where I think she might have more compassion than we have tapped into. Maybe.
I love that. Years and years ago, in 1996, I ran a division of a publicly traded company. It was a sports part of it. I left basketball for a little bit. I was still doing some training. And our CEO had made a bunch of money in his life and lived basically in a B&B right off the Hudson River near West Point. Gorgeous. My wife and I visited. And he told a great story. He said, this is not a good man, by the way, but he told a great story that I've never forgotten. He said when he was in his yacht buying phase, because he made all of his money, everyone had to buy a yacht. He bought the biggest yacht he could find that he thought was the best one. And then he saw his other friends that had bigger yachts. And then when you couldn't get any bigger yachts to fit, everyone started buying helicopters. And so he started helicopter shopping from his yacht, which he had no reason to use at all, right? And he said, I went to a party on someone's yacht, and I was drinking, I stumbled outside wherever the party was, and I saw their big helicopter on the pad of the yacht covered, which is people often did. And I just had to see, because he hadn't bought a helicopter yet. And it was just a husk. And he realized, oh my God, it's all fake. Like, what am I doing? And I've never forgotten that. There used to be, remember the Millionaire Next Door book that came out, and there was a calendar. My wife gave me one that said, millionaires stop worrying about what their neighbors are doing, something like that. And that's your point of a happiness zone. You got to find that spot. But my thought was, she needs her dad. Maybe her mom, obviously. Her moms are just as qualified as dads, but I'm a dad. If that was my daughter, we would be on the phone. and probably a Zoom call. I don't know, you have an iPhone, so we can't do a FaceTime. We would have a very serious conversation about the failures that I had as a father to create a woman who thought the way you think. Because she owns responsibility, not her dad, but I would feel responsible for that. And just to finish the thought, Android rules. My favorite phone call of the pandemic was when my daughter called my wife this week to see, hey, did you get my mail-in ballot sent to you? Because she's far away. I was so happy. Like, she is going to vote. She was also very sad to hear about RBG. I was proud of her. My son, I think, is clueless. I know he'll vote. I know how he'll vote. I'm very proud of him. It's not on his mind. It's on my daughter's mind, as it should be. And I just loved hearing that. My point to that, Jarod, is like we've got some trouble here, and this woman is clearly an example, but don't give up on the younger generation fully.
Your son's worrying about pick and roll coverages right now. That's why.
He's worried about being bullied. He called me this morning. He never calls me. He's 6'3", 180, and he's the second smallest guy on the court all the time. And their starting point guard 6'9", and he's like the next Giannis. and it's hard when he's guarding you. Like, how do you get the ball to the post? You can't throw a bounce pass. And yeah, it's overwhelming. I'm thrilled. And at 6 a.m. stand workouts are great too.
Oh, wow.
Brady's point about the idea of like, what does research suggest? What are you afraid of? And keep asking until you get the
that's something amazing. Yeah.
I think the point that I would probably tap into with her, because I actually think I could talk to this woman, is so nomads worry you. Like, and well, maybe if these people had a place to put some roots,
right, of course,
they could not be nomads.
They're not choosing to be nomads.
Right, like, they're right. No one wants to be a nomad. Right. Like, I think they'd like to set up a home somewhere and have generations of like you. And so wouldn't that be nice? Like, I think I would appeal to those, because again, the thing that we all realize is no matter where you are in the world, ethnicity, culture, whatever, human beings generally all want the same thing, right? They want healthcare. They want make sure their families are like, we all want
picked up on time.
Right? The same thing. We all want the same thing. So I think, Judy, I definitely could not talk to her.
First
Judy would win, damn it.
Who first taught me that, even though I have a global job in a sense, because basketball's global, was Henry. Henry's first told me that when he lived in Ecuador and all the places he's been. And then I remember when I went to Turkey in the 90s, I didn't think as thoughtfully as Henry did, because I hadn't met Henry yet when I first went there. And I went to a buddy's house. He lives in a very nice home in a country club area. He was the first ever 7-footer from America to play basketball here. Went to Evansville. He could have gone to Kentucky or Evansville, didn't know the difference. He chose poorly. This guy's got a PhD. He's got 2 PhDs, clinical psychology and political science. Very brilliant guy named Amir Turan. And his home was amazing. And it's just like any other American home you'd be at. It was just so normal. He's a devout Muslim, amazing guy. But Henry really made me think that way, Jarod, that most of us, and the exceptions only are the problem, right? We want the same things and for our kids. And what's amazing to me too is I bet you guys would agree with me, she doesn't just think she's not racist and that she thinks she's decent. She also probably thinks she's a very religious person.
Probably.
It looks to me like she really believes in probably Jesus. And it doesn't really parallel with her views. And yet she goes to church every Sunday. That's my guess. Yeah. I'm not buying it, let's put it that way.
We all want the same thing by and large, and we are each other's competition for it. Like, that's the other part, right? Like,
not zero-sum game, right?
Henry, your happiness does not mean I won't be happy, right? Like, that's not how this works. Like, but
I would
think that.
Yeah.
But Jarod, to your capitalistic point, I'm very disappointed that you didn't mention it yet.
Whoa, yeah, we're late in the show, Jarod.
We have 2 streaks on the show. You end every show that you're not the star of, and then you also have to bring up every Friday you're a machine. So I'm setting you up, my man.
Well,
this is called teeing you up. You tee me up, I'm teeing you up. So there is no zero-sum game except for this. And I didn't come to this because I'm not a very smart man. I'm a basketball coach till very recently. There is a finite amount of dollars, and the billionaires, and I'm not a poor man, but the billionaires feel like every dollar I pay that person, I'm not getting, which is the only way I can conceive of why they're paying them minimum wage and making billions. There is a competition for that. Business owners and CEOs who pay out, it comes out of their bottom line too often. That is a problem.
Well,
that is not the best way to build a society that we all can prosper in.
you all know how I feel about literally the #1 band in the world.
There we go.
And that plays nothing but hits. Top 40. They are top 1 billion. Every single song and album is a fucking hit. Classic. But that's unregulated capitalism, right? Like, when you don't put a cap on it, well, what's going to stop you from wanting? Like, Jeff Bezos 100% wants to be the world's first trillionaire. 100% wants that. Because that means I am better than, I'm being Jeff Bezos, all the rest of you billionaires. But that amount of wealth is counterproductive, right? Hundreds of millions is counterproductive, right? There comes a point where you have enough money where it actually, you defeat the purpose, right? Because now you're hurting everyone else. And that's really the ruling class, right? And that's what I always say. That's the area where we need to focus. Notice, by the way, they've been eerily silent throughout all this, right? Haven't heard much from the ruling class with what's going on.
And it's honestly, it's not weird to me that people are selfish. It's weird that we contort the entire system toward them, right? Like, wants, fine. We're not going to stop people wanting money, right? But the idea that drives, what our tax policy should be or whether or not we have healthcare is really fucked up. So wait, Judy, I want to clarify something though. The whole would want the same thing, which I said to David in the 90s or whenever the hell that was. To me, what I meant there was everybody wants to raise their kids. Everybody wants to go to the grocery store. Everybody wants to buy cucumbers and come home and chop them up, put them in a salad, and watch a show, right? Like, so this is where this is why I have no anxiety. I literally feel, having lived in Ecuador and India and a bunch of other places, like I think I could go to wherever the worst place in the world is and find that 80% of the people are getting cucumbers and they want their kids to go to school and they're chopping them, putting in a salad, and they're gonna watch TV in the evening. Like, that's just like, so to me, I think it's comforting to know that there's not a group of people, there's not a million people, there's not a country where people are nefarious or troubling. There's not a big group of people who could live over there and ruin things for you, right? Like, there are people who are under stress, and there are sociopaths and psychopaths, whatever, right? Like, but by and large, if you're a person who wants the kinds of things that people want, and that's very safe. That's very good. It's like, who's going to live in secondary housing? It's fine. I think probably the bigger problem is they don't own that housing, right? Like I think that her problems would be solved those people if the government was assisting them purchasing, then they would be around, and she would 20 years later they'll be friends, right? Like
20 years later become friends. Wait, Henry, you mentioned sociopaths and psychopaths. I never put it right. Which one is always the other one, and which one is like not all the other one?
Okay, way outside my area of expertise, but my understanding is psychopaths are born, and sociopaths born with a slightly different brain, right? Sociopaths develop.
Got it.
But I think now my understanding is, we just talked about this with my psychologist mother-in-law the other day, and she was explaining that the latest research is that they're not so divergent as we once thought.
They're just all bad. We know.
Yeah. Well, the environment's a huge factor even in our DNA, right? Environment's a big factor in everything, right? So anything that we think is just distinct from environment is maybe not, right?
All right, 1 minute. Did he have a chance to win tonight? Let's say Bam's not playing. The Dragon's out. Bam's not playing, let's say. Any chance to win?
Tyler Hero takes 80 shots. Let's go. Come on.
They should take 63s.
They should.
Well, between him and Duncan, if they both take 63s, cool.
And Olynyk.
Oh, yeah, Olynyk can shoot threes, too.
And none.
Give me him. They need 63.
If Jimmy Butler's okay, I mean, look, weird things happen. It's not likely, but the Greek team beat Team USA, right? Like, it could happen.
I think Miami can win. I don't think it's likely, but to say that they can't win is silly.
What about the odds? What 20%?
I would give them tonight. Without them, I would give them 10 to 15% chance. It's not 5.
Yeah.
Like, these are professional basketball players, and Lakers have human beings on their team, and they can twist their ankles too and get poked in the eye and hurt their shoulder, or just believe that they're going to win because they're the Lakers. They have LeBron and AD and play very badly, and all of a sudden they're up 4 with 4 to play. Let me tell you something. They're up 4 with 4 to play. It's not a coin flip game just yet, but it's close.
Yeah.
And they will be tight, and Miami will be like, whoa, look at this. And so that's what keep it close. Hope to make a bunch of threes. Contract your defense. Make the Lakers score 50 points from 3 because they're going to go to the rim the whole night without Bam, and give luck a chance to happen that way. But we talked about this yesterday. Play super fast. Try to wear them down to win Game 3.
Devin with the nice stat in there.
Wow. It took me a second to read. 7 straight game 2s. Okay.
Wow.
It still matters who's on the court, though, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah. No,
All right, Jarod.
no one is playing on those teams.
I feel like Jarod should play us out. What do you? I know you got something to close with.
No, I listen. I do. We are in the fourth quarter, though, folks. In all seriousness, I know we talked a lot about this stuff today, but I mean, voting. But yes, after the vote, hold these people accountable, right? The things that we care about: healthcare, education, taxes, all those things. Make them live up to the promises they say they were going to do. And if not, guess what? Get rid of them. And that's not just at the national level, down to your local level as well. Pay attention to who's getting elected, what they care about, and what matters. Vote and take action, people. This is a democracy. It's an interactive sport. It's not just sit back and watch.
All right, we got this.
And happy birthday to my wife,
Happy
whose
birthday.
birthday Sunday.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you, guys.
Love
Thank you,
honey.
Judy.